Well, guys, just when you thought the Lawrence Fox I wouldn't even pork saw their tribe couldn't get any more demented, it naturally has. Because now we got Talk TV calling GB News a hate channel, all while it has the personification of moral fortitude like Ozzy Osbourne's wife on the bloody show.
Oh, it's not somebody just speaking out of turn, it's just foul. Why take it down? He's meant to be somewhat of a
commentator. Commentator,
and politician,
TV presenter.
And, I mean, his vocabulary is this big. I mean, it's disgraceful, it's belittling, it's just... First of all, it's not true. She's a gorgeous-looking woman, and what's more, she's highly intelligent and a great journalist.
Yeah, it's Clownwell crap, but it didn't stop there, because we also had dried-up Wangstein Gordon Brown demanding Ofcom censor GB News over it. This is obviously laughable, because let's be honest here, GB News is the BBC 2.0. Yeah, they talk a bit more sense than the BBC, but that ain't really hard, is it? And never forget, they pump out the climate fear porn and also took money to propagandise the public during the pandemic. But even with that being said, this demented push to silence GB News and its presenters has to be looked at in a wider context of censorship, because in short order Ofcom will be the internet regulator, which means they'll come for us all. Many media outlets are actually calling for this, as are Tory MPs who actually said this about Ofcom.
Ofcom has a really proud record of defending free speech, but I don't want a regulator that's going to shoot from the hip. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, and actually agree with Adam, I think it should be taken off air. It was entirely predictable that Lawrence Fox was going to come out with a statement that was that offensive. I think what was less predictable would be Dan Wootton's smirking.
Oh yes, Ofcom, the defenders of free speech. Let's quickly check their Twitter, shall we? Oh look, they blocked me, so please, Caroline Wokes, tell me about their proud record of defending free speech again.
Ofcom has a really proud record of defending free speech.
Yes, Ofcom, the defenders of free speech, blocked me on Twitter for calling them biased after they ignored 30,000 complaints the public sent in about this. Yeah, 30,000 complaints, and Ofcom did nothing to Britain's Got Talent but find GB News when they get a handful of complaints from lefty fuckpigs. So Ofcom controlling the internet's gonna be like a woke version of North Korea, I expect. But to top it all off, we even have Gordon Brown, like I said, the certified snivelling shitweasel, helping to lay the groundwork for that sort of censorship, so let's go through that quickly.
Now, the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has responded to GB News' suspension of presenters Lawrence Fox and Dan Wootton over comments about a female journalist. He's been speaking to Sky's Sophie Ridge.
I think we've got to look very carefully at GB News and all these broadcast companies that are emerging, because we've got a far wider range of broadcasters and the system of regulation is not good enough to cope with it. So Ofcom needs to have more teeth to deal with standards, issues of standards.
Yes, we need to look at these broadcasters because they're not part of the original legacy media, even though they spout a slightly less woke version of the same bollocks literally 99% of the time. This is obviously proof, though, it's just being used to justify Ofcom's powers being ramped up to essentially mirror V for Vendetta or something. This is why he sat there saying Ofcom needs more teeth to enforce standards, which does make me laugh when this is the standards we get from the legacy media.
It was an historic 8-goal victory for England last night as the Lionesses secured their place in the quarter-finals. But all starting 11 players and the 5 substitutes that came onto the pitch were all white. And that does point towards a lack of diversity in the women's game.
The fact that almost everyone in these beautiful places is white. That is certainly the case here in Larks and has been at all of the places that I've been fortunate enough to visit through competition and now work.
You would? Well, listen to this. Some fish can change from being a boy fish to a girl fish, or from being a girl fish to a boy fish.
I've seen other white celebrities come out and say that they've got breast cancer. I've looked at the comments, nothing but praise. So this is where you're going to see a difference between black women and white women talking about it.
And one of the most remarkable
sequences as well, was seeing the Himalayas before and after. Before, people in Pakistan couldn't see them. You can see the split screen there. That was before when it was just like smog, basically. And then look at that, crystal clear views. That's remarkable, isn't it?
It was, and I mean, it's quite science. You know, we're trying to do as much science as we can about what the science is discovering. But I like this is just an ordinary man in the street seeing something that he'd never seen. Nobody had seen that in living memory. And I just think it was quite sort of spiritual, slightly. You know, it's almost like Mother Nature saying, I can't breathe, but now I can. Let me show you what you're missing. This is the most iconic thing on the planet.
Oh yeah, anti-white crap or climate lies using doctored photos are perfectly fine, but telling some tart you don't want a porker is the be-all and end-all that means TV stations and 2-0 should be cancelled. Oh, and never forget the BBC hiding Jimmy Savile for all them years is neither here nor there, much like ITV and Schofield. But simply saying you wouldn't dick down some feminist trout is now the worst thing the media's ever seen. This is obviously bollocks and, like I said, is being used to justify Ofcom going full 1984, well, as soon as the law allows them to. And on top of that, it's also being used by other media outlets to take down the competition, which we will prove beyond all doubt later. But first, let's see the last bit of what this dried-up old Wangstein actually had to say and shit all over it from a great bloody height.
And certainly, you can't allow people to appear on air and talk about women in the way that they're doing and without any propriety. These people have got to be kept off the air. They just cannot be allowed. I'm not in favour of censorship, but you cannot have this fall in standards and allow it to continue.
Do you even listen to yourself when you talk?
Oh yeah, he's not in favour of censorship, despite literally calling for it 2 seconds before, proving the cognitive dissonance of these cretinous tosspots really knows no bloody bounds. But let me get what he said straight in my mind quickly. You're not allowed to go on TV and say you don't want to go balls deep in some bird's sock pocket because it might get her salty, while at the same time the same media outlets scream about Russell Brand, who, let's be honest, they actively promoted when he wanted to plough filth bag snatches as often as he could. To me, that seems like the sort of hypocrisy the lefty trout at the centre of this would love after she cried about not wanting to be shagged, despite her saying the same thing herself to men on bloody Twitter. Yeah, this once again tells me it's got bugger all to do with what was actually said and more to do with what it can be used to achieve, which Gordon Brown actually gave away at the end there when he said he wasn't in favour of censorship while calling for it at the same time.
You're an imbecile.
Either way, as many pointed out, the whole thing is a storm in a teacup over a comment that's about as offensive as calling someone ugly. But it wasn't even finished there because Adam Bolton went on Newsnight yesterday and said the quiet part out loud just to prove what many had suspected.
In fact, I was at a news meeting at another broadcaster today and was saying, well, you know, would you still put Lawrence Fox on television? And the conclusion was you probably wouldn't. And both of them, I think, have damaged themselves by doing this, and therefore we say, well, why was GB News doing it? And, you know, I have to say, I think the complaints have piled up against GB News. I think there is a delicate and important broadcast ecology in this country. I think, you know, GB News is trying to bust that ecology, and frankly, what Ofcom should do is shut it down, like it shut down RT.
Oh, the fragile media ecosystem sounds like code for they don't want GB News in the club, or they know the legacy media is a dying shit show that makes all new competition a threat to their very existence. That there for me, though, is proof beyond all doubt that this, like the Russell Brand it job, is the media and political scumbags using complete bollocks to take down people they don't like, or to normalise the type of censorship they've been trying to put in place for years. Shit, it's probably both. But either way, this whole story is literally a storm in a teacup, and as I've said, is being used for other means, so don't even look at what he said or anything like that, because that's not their real goal. I'm telling you, their real goal is censorship, plain and bloody simple.
Pandemic.
Where